Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm JuliusH Fun, and I'll be your guide on this meditation practice that enters into a space of mindfulness through the act of drawing. Each week I post videos here on YouTube that go through different exercises that engage our body and our presence with technique to tease out some creativity by opening up a space for ourselves. I also do these exercises live. If you'd ever like to join via Zoom, you can find the link in the Mindful Prat website, or even catch them live in Twitch at JuliusH Fun. No special skills or tools needed. Get a piece of paper or a sketchbook, pen, pencil, or anything you like to draw with, and let's draw together. And I thought today we'd use the meditation to look in at a little bit of maybe resistance by closing our eyes through a lot of the drawing and just keeping the shape kind of simple and see where it goes. So we'll get started on a warm-up to feel comfortable with the technique so we can let ourselves sink in a little bit to that internal space without the visual feedback for the first 15 minutes or so. But to start with, we can do it with eyes open, just on some scrap or in the corner of a page. We're just going to draw some squares and bring our attention and consciousness to the direction, speed, and beginning and end of those forms. So I'm just going to start by picking any point and working my way around in any direction that feels kind of comfortable at first. So I happen to go clockwise, starting lower left. And to warm up for yourself, just testing a few different places. Start in the lower left and go counterclockwise, upper right, pick a direction, move around. Just try several out. Each one will offer kind of a different feeling. It may be different than how you normally draw a square, going all the way around. Some people do, some do the top and the sides, many different ways, but we'll stick with just a continuous around motion, which means we'll push the pen sometimes and draw the pen sometimes. It may just add a different feeling to things. After we've tried out a few with that continuous motion, which will help us as we close our eyes just to keep track of things a little bit. If you have one direction that feels more comfortable that you've recognized, you can take that as your starting place. I think for myself, it's starting lower left and moving clockwise around for whatever reason. And as we move to a new page in that open space and territory to do the longer form exercise, take a couple of breaths in to stabilize and ground yourself. Give some attention to how the feet are sitting on the ground, or depending on where you're at, perched or dangling. Just make sure they're somewhere stable to support you. Breathe into the back and the chest to just lighten the shoulders and that core and energy supported with the breath, so it doesn't bring distraction as we draw. And then last time for a little bit with the eyes open, though anytime you need to readjust, feel free to bring them back into play. Find a location, take a breath in, and then try to track in that comfortable way by visualizing the square. Just moving from that starting point in the direction you've chosen, clockwise for myself, lower left as the start and end. And then move to a new location. Again, you can keep the eyes closed and just let it be wherever the pen lands. Breathing in to prepare, and then just with regular breaths, working in that same motion for yourself, clockwise, from the starting point back to the beginning. We'll do a few of these in this direction just to bring that attention into our kind of comfortable starting place of working. Go at your own pace a little bit, breathe in, find location. And then as you breathe out, and just regularly over a few breaths, tracking visually in your mind that shape of a square. And as we do a few of these, you may begin to find that desire to see how you're doing, to see if we're tracking along, forming that recognizable shape of a square. And give yourself some space to feel that, to recognize it, and then through the breath between moments to just let it pass by. We'll have time to return to whatever figures form on the page. And you may have lots of practice drawing squares and they all come out exact, or perhaps they're wobbly circles turned in different directions. And as you finish up the shape you're working on, this first round, bringing with it familiarity and comfort, will now change things up. Whatever direction you were going, clockwise or counterclockwise, work in the other direction and choose a new starting location. I'm going to move to top right and go counterclockwise. Use the breath between to calm the mind, to kind of stabilize and open up that awareness to what changes in the movement. The pen may be starting in a new direction, less fluid to our normal way of writing or drawing. It may take a little more energy of the mind to track around that space of the square, keeping a rhythm developing around the sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can begin to connect that repetition to ourselves, to our breath. As you approach the next shape and take a breath in, find that location and let the breath out on the 1 stroke. Breathe in again on the 2, out on the 1, and in to return on the 4. You can find through a few shapes that same rhythm, breathing comfortably in and out, tracking the speed of the hand to the rise and fall of the sternum. Letting the cycles blend together with a regular breath. And with this engagement of the body's rhythms, can let go of some of the potential discomforts or just estrangement in an awkward way of drawing, preparing ourselves to go deeper into this practice of disassociation from the comfort. As you finish out the shapes you're working on, if you feel comfortable with it, you can change hands or Just choose a new starting place and pick a direction for the next several shapes, continuing to keep them aligned with that breathing rhythm, natural breaths along each side. Finding the timing that works for your motion. In and out, light and smooth. Each cycle with our eyes closed and disengaged, just tracking the moments of itself. We may know that it's overlapping, colliding with the others that came before. We can let that be just part of the accumulation of action, of presence. Something unique to this moment that we can track with when we open our eyes again. As you're more comfortable with the technique and aware of the direction of action, starting point, orientation, movement flow, you may feel more comfortable playing with that or letting it be chosen by proximity, by what feels right wherever the hand is. Feel free to take a little time and focus there on your breath and visioning the tracing out of that shape of the square. If you need to find the page, try to use your hands. Let the eyes remain closed if possible. Feel free to switch back and forth between hands and directions, allowing the practice and repetition to bring ease and lightness to the drawing. After the initial action is begun, we just flow through the motion, letting the pen float over the page, letting the hand move with the technique. With just a couple more minutes, a couple more cycles of that breath. Feel free to stretch the legs out a little bit, stretch the shape longer, wider, larger, smaller. As with the repetition, we gain some control, both consciously and in our fingers. In the next couple cycles, begin to wrap up this phase of the exercise. We should by now have populated a pretty dense field of squarish things. Can take one more round together As we take a couple of breaths, establish, find a place for that final rotation. Breathe in and follow your rhythm out. As you wrap up that shape, you can begin to let the eyes gently drift open. The light may be a bit bright. Maybe give them a few blinks. Move around with the body a little bit just to come back into that physical presence of the space. To take in the field of action that you brought here onto the page. And now that it exists, the territory for our eyes to wander through, a space for us to build within. As you look at it, use what comes to mind as an entrance into the space. Perhaps there are many overlapping corners as a place to start. Can we trace those out? Bring emphasis with the same care to the technique as we used before, but now guided by our vision. Layering pen or pencil over the page, setting the starting direction and movement, following it through with the breath, with the eyes, building layers to reinforce what is seen. Can overlap to thicken the line, or perhaps bring in offset to give greater dimension to those intersecting spaces. Trust the guidance of the eyes as it draws you to spatial conditions on the page. Finding an evolution of the technique. Guided by hand and eye. And as that begins to feel comfortable, or you're finding a rhythm of shape and action, whatever that is, you can then lean into it a bit more by continuing the same play we had in the beginning. Challenging the thing that becomes static, starting in the same place, moving in the same direction, by testing out new motions for a few rounds and connecting that inward to the breath, finding the areas that draw the attention, choosing a starting place for the cycle of emphasis, and breathing your way through the completion of an action of drawing. I find the in-breath along the first stroke, followed by a longer out-breath to complete the shape. Very natural and relaxing rhythm for me right now. Just finding whatever cycle you can that brings ease to that motion. but is clear enough to keep it in your attention. To keep it in your awareness. As your senses are able to build up a greater map from that closer, mindful engagement with the pen and pencil. As it maps, shapes, building memory with both the inhalation and exhalation, with the forward, backwards, up, down, left and right, the motion of the hand. Over time, we may build up a memory there of the beginning and end of shapes, helping us see them in the space of our mind as much as on the space of the page. A bit of practice to the mindfulness, both for our drawing and for our awareness. And after you've experimented with a few directions, finding that rhythm and ease in the repetition of action, you can open up and take a few minutes to just redraw, continue the technique, or explore anything new you begin to see into the drawing, finding opportunity for constructing new relationships within those figures from time. As you continue to draw and explore within this space, you'll come back into a presence here in the space we inhabit, letting the hand move, the eyes drift and guide, just giving ourselves a little physical presence and awareness. First, at the engagement with action, feeling the texture of the paper as it meets the pen or pencil. Let that subtlety draw you both in to the medium and the space you're working with, and also pull us out as we look more analytically at our senses, activating some of those other parts of the brain that we've asked to take a break for a while. And return to awareness of our space through our nerves, to the temperature that may be present in the room. Bring some attention to those other extremities of the feet. How are they sitting on the ground or dangling in the air? You flex the toes a little bit, curl them in and out, gripping the ground or your socks, just giving them back some of that attention that was in the space of the drawing. You flex the ankles up and down a little bit. Just lift even slightly the bottom of the foot from the ground. And then as you finalize your last few strokes to work out any urgencies of completion, and let the pen come to a rest. Take a few breaths to fully expand the rib cage from the center, forward and back. Left and right. Breathing at your pace, expanding it up and down. And a final breath that just goes in all directions. Hold it in for a moment. Let it sink out. As you come back to your space and complete the practice you've given yourself, and hopefully find something kind of interesting in the collection of somewhat random marks forming space on the page. And as the pen comes to rest on the page, we welcome ourselves back into the space around us, prepared, hopefully, to meet any challenges or opportunities of the day with creativity, practiced here just for a few minutes on the page in a safe place without consequence for generating a masterpiece or anything overly complex, but also with a rigorous attention to detail, with establishing action as the guide for generating possibility, and with some techniques that could just help us to open up that space of our mind and see where we might travel. All of it hinges back on the breath, so whenever you find yourself needing a little bit of space of that creativity, begin to align those cycles of the body. Use that technique of breathing to map the territory around you so you can take stock and be prepared to take action. I hope you've enjoyed the exercise, at least gotten a little relaxation or perhaps some creativity out of it. If you do like it, give it a thumbs up below. Let me know in the comments what you've discovered in your drawing worlds you've created with these floating islands. Whatever you're doing for the rest of the day, I hope it's creative and fun. This is JuliusH Fun, signing off. Draw well.